But
Good afternoon. It is 5:04 on June 5th, 2024, and this is the District of Columbia State Board of Education working session is now called to order. This month's working session is being held in person at the Marion S. Berry Jr. Building. However, in-person attendance is limited to State Board members, staff, and guests. The working session is also being streamed live on the State Board's YouTube page for members of the public to attend. Please visit SBOE.dc.gov to learn how to submit and or present testimony at an upcoming State Board public meeting. If you follow the roll will now be called to determine the presence of a quorum. Executive Director Butler, please call the roll.
Representative Kelly. Present. Representative Villaflor. Representative Washington.
present,
Representative Yarkin. Representative Best.
Present.
Representative Chang. Representative Boulay.
Here.
Representative Henderson. Here. Representative O'Leary.
Here.
Representative Reed. Representative Williams.
Present.
Representative Patterson.
Present.
Representative Thompson. Mr. Vice President, you have the floor.
Thank you, Director. Again, welcome to our June working session. At this time, I would previously share a leadership report. We did not meet this last month, but we will schedule one leadership coming up soon. With that being said, we will move to our Executive Director's report. I'm pleased to turn it over to the Executive Director, Denise Butler, for a report.
Good evening, members of the State Board. We are excited to welcome our new Public Information Officer, Andrew Ruth, to our team. He is here in the room, so you can see him wave. We are excited to have a fully staffed State Board office with no vacancies. So we're excited about the work that is going to happen there. Please be on the lookout for an email from Andrew to schedule one-on-ones with each of our members so that he can get a chance to get to know you, your issues, and all the ways in which you would like to leverage his communication skills for the State Board. Next, we will be starting our space planning with DGS and some external architects for the redesign of the State Board space on next week. We will follow up with you in regards to what those plans look like. There may be a time in the early fiscal year of 2025 where the team may have to be completely mobile or virtual so that they can construction on our office space, but we will keep you in the loop with that. Next, if you have not filed your public financial disclosure forms, there is a fine from Vega that will go into effect on June 15th. So you should have emails in your inbox. They said that they are late. They sent me a report this morning, so I haven't reviewed it yet, but I will review it, and it tells me who is submitted and who is not, and I will let those individuals know. But they also send each of you a personalized email if you haven't found it yet. Next, our applications for the Student Advisory Committee are open. We have emailed every single high school principal the application and flyer. We've also shared it with all of our external partners in the education cluster around recruitment. And as of today, there are 10 applications. And so we're hoping that by June 15th, there are more applications. So we're pleased, but this happens every year. Kids are taking finals and getting ready for summer break, finalizing plans for the summer. But we usually get a bulk of them by the 15th. Which is also around the time the school is out for the year, particularly for DCPS. So I did get some positive feedback from some principals that are glad that we personally reached out to them via email to share the information so that they can put it directly into the hands of their students. Last but not least, if you need anything from staff, please let us know via email. Various staff will be taking vacation over the summer so that we'll be able to make sure we have your needs prioritized. If you have not used your stipend, for constituent engagement, please reach out to Roma and Ian, who is here, our procurement analyst, so that we can get those items procured for you and time enough to use them before the end of the fiscal year. Are there any questions?
I have three. Could you send the, schools who have responded to the student applications so that we can get in touch with our principals if they haven't? Could you just give us a list of the students who have you received applications from?
Oh, we can pull that from the application database, like the students. Yes, I agree that. I can pull that.
I mentioned to you about your report. Can we get a copy of your report?
Most of the time it's just bullets and not, but yeah, I will type one up for you.
Okay, and this is, I don't know why, but I got a check today for an amount that I'm not familiar with. It's from the system. Do you know why?
No, sir, I do not cut checks. I have no
I
idea.
know that.
But I mean, to my knowledge, there was no distribution of funds to members.
You get it?
So I'm not quite sure what that is. Was it a paper check?
No.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it was deposited in my account, but it wasn't, it was more money than I get from what we get. And I didn't know what it was from. It's not from UBC.
I think it's a performance bonus, maybe.
Right. Oh, that's good.
And you
No,
know.
there are no performance
I'm not giving it back.
Well,
Did you check your accounts today?
Like,
well, I mean, it was deposited today.
Yeah.
Well, and I would say that's also off of the like pay cycle. So,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, so I'm not quite sure.
I'm not either.
But I can put you in contact with someone from DCHR, the payroll, and they should be able to explain it to you.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Are there any additional questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Director Butler. That's the question, everything. I will now turn it over for the next 40 minutes to distinguish Andrew Gall from the Office of State Superintendent of Education, who will present a discussion on the development of a district-wide graduate profile.
Good evening. Thank you so much. Very busy weeks for me, and day for me, so apologies if I did not say hello to you individually, but good evening, hello. I'm happy to be here to have an opportunity to slow down and hear from state board members on a really important and exciting topic, which is the development of a DC-wide graduation profile, updating the district's graduation requirements. Next slide, please. Tonight, rather than presenting information and answering your questions on the presentation content, I am primarily here to listen and receive feedback from board members. That means that I only have a very short presentation for you. I will concisely describe what a graduate profile is and what its purpose is. I will provide an overview of our engagement timeline. Finally, I have a couple of discussion questions that ASI is seeking feedback from each board member on. So we have three objectives in attending tonight's working session. First, I want to elicit your ideas for DC's graduate profile. Second, I want to hear who and how you would like us to engage the public on this subject. I know in the past, board members have come up with very specific suggestions for public engagement. For example, on the interactive board that we developed at Representative Reed's recommendation for the report card. So those are the types of ideas I would love to draw out this evening, so we can incorporate those into our plans ahead of time. So would appreciate your feedback on that. And then number three, I will share ASI's anticipated timeline for future engagement with me. Finally, just want to note that I am not the content lead for this project. Our Assistant Superintendent of Post-Secondary and Career Education, Dr. Antoinette Mitchell, and her team is leading this work to reimagine DC's graduation requirements. As many of you likely know, Dr. Mitchell brings a wealth of experience to this work as the former dean of the School of Education of Trinity Washington University, prior education policy experience, DCPS teaching experience, and a PhD in education from University of California at Berkeley. However, Dr. Mitchell is currently out of the country. As a result, you're stuck to me. So I don't think that'll be a big problem because like I said, I'm simply here to sort of receive feedback from you. But if you have really specific questions on graduate profile, I may have to, demur a little bit. Next slide, please. So ASI is currently developing the inaugural district-wide graduate profile. A graduate profile is used by states to highlight the academic, personal, and interpersonal competencies that high school students should master in advance of graduation. ASI is developing a graduate profile to help build common goals and expectations for graduating district students and to help inform our priorities for updating DC's graduation requirements. At least 13 other states have already developed a graduate profile. Some states have more or less detail in their profiles. You can see an example from North Carolina on the screen. Next slide, please. And next. So in terms of timeline for this work, I anticipate coming back, well, I'm here today to give just a quick overview and timeline of our work. Then over the summer, June through August, we anticipate doing a lot of public engagement. So I've provided some examples on here of folks we are thinking about engaging. This is not a fully comprehensive list, but this is one area that I'd love your attention on because I really want your feedback on who is missing from this list. Who else is it really important that you think that ASI should engage to make sure that we have good feedback on what graduates need to be successful moving beyond secondary education. There, just to make sure folks have time to think on that.
Do you want us to ask you now?
I'll wait until the end, but thanks. And then in August, we will come back. I anticipate Dr. Mitchell, Dr. Shamir Jones, who are leading this work, will present a draft profile to the board at your August working session. Then in fall, we will look to publish the final graduate profile. Next slide, please. Subsequent to our work on the profile, we will begin work on the graduation requirements. So we will socialize ideas for graduation requirement changes, then finalize those revisions, come up with a final draft, present a draft to the state board. We will get feedback, we will revise, and hopefully get forward to approval there in early 2025. And then we can roll out the new graduation requirements, promulgating the regulations, hosting PA session, technical assistance sessions with LEAs in spring and summer of 2025. Next slide, please. And so, like I said, I'm keeping the presentation short here this evening, but because I wanted to make sure that we have time to hear from each of you on these topics. So first, we want to know, what do you think is really important to be included in the graduate profile? So what content, knowledge, characteristics, and skills are most important for preparing high school graduates for college, career, and life? And who should, and as I mentioned previously, who should we engage to receive feedback for the profile and graduation requirements? And if you have any specific ideas on how we should do our engagement work too, happy to receive that feedback. And so at this point, we'd just love to hear from each of you on these questions so that I can take notes, bring it back to the team, and we can incorporate this into our work here over the summer and beyond.
Representative Boulay.
So I think one thing that would be helpful is outreach to the various PTOs and LSATs, particularly once you get to the junior high and high school level. I mean, the elementary school parents may not have thought that far ahead on this yet, but I think they may have some suggestions, at least kind of giving them an opportunity or pipeline to submit feedback to OSSI, because you'll probably have parents who are typically very engaged and may want to provide comments. So if you could consider that. And then for me on this as to what we should be focused on, I know there's been a lot of challenges with our students entering college, but then not graduating. So trying to figure out what the barriers are to students succeeding when they get to college and graduating from college. So, and I don't know what that would be yet, but it would just be something I'd like to contemplate, like to reach out to experts to try to understand and then try to the degree possible, try to develop graduation requirements that would solve that issue. So that would be my feedback.
Other members? Bree?
I'll start with the engagement strategy. We're coming up on back to school, believe it or not. And I know there's gonna be a lot of back to school events in each ward. Like I know my council member has usually a huge one every year, if not multiple. That'll be a good opportunity for OSSI to come engage, because I definitely know, community members are just concerned about like what skills these students come out of with the DC education like having. And it's just beyond just the math and reading aspect. Like they're looking for things like, are you a good like community member, citizen? Just like even functional skills related to like life and living. Like, there's been like this picture that's been floating around from the news about like what people interview and the things that people do, like show up with their parents, which is, not a thing to do, plus other things. So like those are the things that I think our community members are like really looking forward to, like making sure that when students are leaving schools, they are prepared. So maybe something similar to what you did like during FS. One, just using the opportunity to let people know like we're looking at, this profile, what the profile is, and then, getting feedback and leveraging those back to school events. And kind of doing something similar with FS, collecting the themes. I guess maybe that is. I'm curious. I know, what was it, my first year on the board, I believe, we had a really in-depth session about like what is a graduate profile and how it links to everything. And I honestly cannot remember. So like I see this picture with like what was this, North Carolina, of like these key skills, but I'm like, what after this, what happens? Or like, what does this do? Or it's just a cute graphic. So like, how do we like actuate this, and how meaningful is it to people to have one of these versus just getting into nitty gritty of like creating better graduation requirements? So that's my feedback. And I can definitely, when I see those events, keep y'all posted.
Others? Representative Anderson?
So I'm the chair of the Readiness Committee, also includes Vice President Patterson, Representative Best, and Representative Chang. So we have been thinking about these questions also in parallel to you in anticipation of this work. Some of the things that we have talked about so far include trying to get a perspective of employers to the extent that we can. I think it would also be very instructive to talk to recent graduates who have encountered the world, whether it be at college or career, get feedback. I think the challenge there would be reaching those students might be difficult, but I think it would be really valuable to hear from them. I think it would, in parallel to hearing from employers, to hear from university folks who are encountering for DC graduates, particularly their first couple of years out of high school. And I know also that there is past work that the board has done on graduation requirements in 2018, I believe. And so it might be instructive to take a look back at that.
Yeah, if you're able to share any. Sure.
Just to piggyback on what Representative Henderson was talking about, I would like to see a copy of the requirements you can send that to us.
The current requirements.
Yes.
Okay.
And how do those, what do those requirements have to do with life at the hospital? Because we have, it's a list of courses, you know, that they have to take and, but what does that do if somebody, I was talking about students who are basically seniors, you know, what are you gonna do on the day after graduation? Are you ready for the day after graduation? And, at the NASB conference we went to last year, I was in a workshop on other state plans. So I would like, if you could get us like 3 or 4 different state plans. So we won't have to, fix it if it's not broken. Because if we can just see what other states do, how they work. Because we are unique as a state and our students are unique. Need to know what we can do to prepare someone for life after high school. Just passing a class in biology or in English or in math or something like that. Does that get you ready for your life after high school? I mean, for those of us on the board, were we ready for college when we graduated from high school? Or were we ready for the world of work when we graduated from high school? I wasn't, so I'm not a good role model for that. What do we do to have plans to help our students ready themselves for life? That's what this whole profile should look like. You know, our profile should, this student has learned this skill. When Representative Reed was talking about other things rather than just subject matter. But financial literacy is extremely important. We're very proud of our work together to get the financial literacy standards. Even the social studies standards, the students are going to be working on this year for the first time are going to have something to do with what's going on in the world today, rather than, you know, what happened 300 years ago. So I guess that's
Representative Bass.
I guess the real question is, how much flexibility do we really have with this? The reason why I ask is because in order to get into college, you have to have a certain amount of courses. And so it's like, what are we looking at? Are we really looking at the difference of maybe like 3 or 4 classes or something like that? Or is it more? And so that's just, I mean, that's really my question. I know you don't have that answer right now, but it's just, as we think about what does the graduation profile look like, or what characteristics, skills and things of that nature, like it all has to be tied into those courses that they have to take in order to get into college as well. Which is unfortunate because I think that there's far more that our kids need in order to be successful. But I'm literally looking at like course requirements right now. And then looking at what we have in DC currently, as far as like the academic requirements. And it's pretty much aligned, which is good, right? It's necessary. But when we talk about like changing it and updating, I don't know how much flexibility we really have.
In regards to who to engage with, or at least linking some of the work that's happening, like I know there's a now emphasis on preparing the middle school students for like vocational. That's actually something that a student reached out to us about like, it feels like sometimes the focus is on college. So also make sure that our students are interested in vocational or business, or just maybe just need a little extra time to figure out like, you know, what qualities or skills will they have to. On the flip side, similar to what Representative Best is saying, like, are at least DC students coming out with the minimum requirements for our DC universities? That was something that I talked to a parent about, who also, the child also has special needs, but she was like, you know, you can't get into UDC. Which in my head, I'm like, that is at least something or some avenue possibly to help our students who may even just need extra time or an option versus just saying like, no, you can't enter the freshman class. So that was one piece. Representative Chang was mentioning a while back about the special education, like diploma or credential or some kind of alternative for children with disabilities. So I'm curious if we're gonna, as we're doing, I mean, I would imagine the profile, whatever the characteristics for all students are gonna be ingrained in that profile, but I'm curious about their graduation requirements. It's the opportunity to get into the alternative mechanism for children with disabilities. I think that's it.
Representative Washington, did you have a question?
Kind of, like a question and a comment. So I guess content knowledge that I feel like are most important are kind of like the standards that we just passed, the financial literacy standards and the social and emotional learning standards. For the financial literacy standards, I know that's its own elective course now. So I was just looking at the requirements, like the current requirements, would that still follow under like the elective title? Like, would it be under an elective subject or would it kind of be its own separate subject as required? Because there's like English and then there's mathematics and science requirements, but would that, like if we were to require financial literacy, would that be under elective still, or would that be its own thing, or is that kind of the question I'm asking today?
Yeah, that's the type of question that we will have to work to solve and answer. And so I think that's one reason why in sort of the number one question, I'm really trying to identify if there are things that you feel really strongly, like it should be an elective where you take financial literacy or economic, like if you have an opinion on that, or if you think that it should be mandated that everyone takes financial literacy, like those are the types of examples I'm hoping to get feedback on that help inform us as we go through the process.
So then I would say financial literacy standards, of course, and social and emotional learning standards, but since that's under some course, I don't know how that would be measured as a requirement, because I know that the social and emotional learning standards is supposed to be like implemented across different courses from different teachers and things like that. I just don't know how that, well, I have concerns with how that would be measured if we were to require it. I think it should be required, but
Yeah, I guess I'll start. When you say youth advisory committee, what, can you say more about what that is? Is that the SAC or is that something else?
I believe that is something else.
Okay, I just think that I like what Representative Goulet said with student voice or parent voice, Representative Best, being practical about where we're going. Cause even, I know that with a financial literacy class, if you don't take, some schools don't accept that as a math credit. So we want to make it more accessible, but we also want to make sure that students can get into a four-year university if that's the route they want to go. And I think we also still kind of have a captive audience right now with seniors at graduation, because we're trying to roll this out June through August. So I feel like seniors are most in the mindset of oh, what I wish would have been done differently right now as they're kind of crossing the stage. So if there's a survey that we can use at graduations or push out now, given that we're starting the engagement now before the draft plan, I feel like that would be really great because it's fresh in their mind. So I don't know the feasibility of that, but that would be a great way of reaching youth across sectors.
I'm also thinking open, I know some people you would get the survey and be I'm done with school, but maybe even at graduations too, open it up to have a QR code or something for even parents or family members or community members or an attendance of hey, congrats to your grad and we're looking at new requirements. Could you fill out this brief survey? So that way you also feel this, you get the student component, but you also get the community or family component too. That's a good idea.
Director Butler?
So I think, I don't know, so I went to high school in the rural area, right? And one of the things that they made sure that all the seniors had, they worked with the closest community college. And everyone who graduated, we all graduated with a high school diploma. And I was a certified customer service specialist. And it was built into a class. So I just think if there's an opportunity to align deeper with curriculum, so like those type of things, so if people have some type of credential coming out, that would be super helpful. And they presented all the seniors who took that particular elective with their credential at graduation. But also wanted to build on what Representative Henderson was saying. But I just also think this is probably one of the opportunities for cross-sector engagement on a whole place. I think the Greater Washington Partnership, because their particular focus is looking at businesses in Washington, Maryland, and Virginia, particularly because our youth don't just stay here. And so they're looking at like how to recruit, they're looking for employees for those businesses and other opportunities to align. They're also doing some work on workforce pipeline. So I think that's a captive audience. The DC Chamber, because that's part of the city's work that they do. But then I also feel like the new office and the DMV, the Office of Education through Employment, they're working on the data pipeline, because I think having data to really be the crux of some of the decisions is gonna be really important. And they've already pulled together a group of stakeholders who are meeting regularly across DC government. So to really sort of make sure that hands left and right is talking to each other. And they pulled in the Research Practice Partnership chair who's been working on that. So she's been really great. So I just think that those are some actual like hands-on places to continue to dig deep. And I don't know if there's already some consortium of colleges or community colleges and universities. I just think they also know what they're looking for, because like representing this, like their requirements are not necessarily changing. So what does that look like to prepare our students? Are we preparing our students for college, or are we preparing them for just life and what that looks like and maybe different things?
Now, I know that certain things are like required, like we have to do certain things, and I get that. But I also don't wanna like bring everyone together for something that we can't really change. And so, I just, I just wanna get back to that, like, how much of this can we actually change? And I would love for like, if later on, maybe we could like have like some type of response as far as like, what is this in essence something that will be the exact same next year and the year after and the year after the year after, because of the fact that there's not much wiggle room as far as like the changes that we can actually make to some of the requirements.
In terms of like legality and like what is required of a state to have is almost nothing. So we could do almost anything. There are some states that don't have any state level requirements and just say, Ellie, as you guys decide. So I think there's a lot that could move, but I think in terms of your questions about like, if we want to prepare students for X, Y, and Z, that's where we start to narrow in on less being able to be changed.
Can I just sort of recap what I heard in terms of answering number one, and then you can correct me if I misheard anything, or maybe that'll spark anything additional.
Sure.
So I'm hearing one is definitely an interest in sort of alignment to college and college credits and college needs. I heard that from Representative Goulet as well as Representative Best and Williams and maybe other folks that I'm forgetting. I've heard there was a question about sort of flexibility in terms of, are there maybe pathways for college versus other pathways that may be more flexible there in terms of meeting what students need? I heard from Representative O'Leary, like a real emphasis on beyond just the courses. Are there other things that can be incorporated into the profile that really go to what you need in life? And Representative Reed, I believe, sort of touched on that as well, where she was saying, a student has to know how to do a job interview, right? That's more of a skill than a course. So that interest in having that reflected. I heard also an interest from Representative Reed sort of around vocational education or career and technical education, and how are we meeting those needs, as well as the special ed interest in maybe about reevaluating the special education diploma and if there's an alternative there. And from Representative or from Executive Director Butler, I heard an interest in maybe having something on the diploma that recognizes a special curriculum or sort of pathway that the student went upon. I also heard all the recommendations for engagement, so I have those as well. But I was just, for number one, does that seem like the right areas of interest for you all, or is there something that's missing? Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Just another point, I think people have touched on this, but we're not just talking about like checking off boxes like either of these courses, but like does completing these courses mean that the student is prepared for college?
Or career.
Or career, and not to jump to the engagement, but what I've heard in my conversations, is that the standards that we have for our graduates are not high. That's what I typically hear from parents, from school leaders, which also reminds me that we, for practical reasons, this conversation focuses a lot about high school, but it's not just high school. This is from birth to graduation, all plays a part to prepare this graduation. So all the things that we're talking about all the time about literacy and so on are all really relevant here. And the last thing I can send you the 2018 board work had a task force and that's the report. So
So an interest not just in sort of completion of courses, but some level of competency that must be shown associated.
I'm looking around trying to see if there's other questions, but I do want to kind of like, I'm not answering one or two, but I want to get to about three things. I think this is nice. But what is the ultimate goal? How are we going to test the intelligence of the requirements of this? I really like to say, okay, there's a problem that I have. This is when I read reports where people who come to the city make more money than graduates from our school system. There's a huge gap in the earning power. See that a lot. What is our ultimate goal? How are we measuring the success of what we're requiring for them to have the competencies and things that they have against how successful they are after they meet those requirements? I kind of is where my mind goes to. Because as I said, this is very nice, this is pretty and everything like that. But at the end of the day, I need to make sure that district students, they go to places, they're successful in college, they're successful in their careers. We're closing income gaps, things like that, and opportunities. This is a great city to come to. Everybody kind of leapfrogs all of our students into these nice careers and stuff like that. And you're like, wow, why aren't we seeing more of our students, our graduates in those positions, whether they're federal, city, or any other city? So that's kind of my question, why I leapfrog into.
So maybe an interest in some sort of piloting to measure effectiveness before moving forward, or really an interest in that effectiveness. So,
That and this is a tangent but related, the stats of the longitudinal data system and that postgraduate information collection to help, balance what we see from what we establish a profile or even just the requirements that like post experience, what does that look like? So I'm curious, we haven't talked about the data system in a bit. So I'm just kind of curious, do you have any updates about that?
sure. I'm generally hesitant to say
Oh,
too much outside of topics.
Yeah,
but
no,
I'll
no,
say
that
quickly.
wasn't like a real, like, you don't have to. answer the
Okay,
question.
okay.
That was more of a, it was a question, but it was like can we get like an update in the future?
Yeah.
Mm.
I've got a question.
Go ahead, sir.
I don't know what it's called when you have one of those things where you take a picture of it and you survey. What is that called?
The QR code?
What is it?
QR code?
QR code. Is it too late? It's not too late in the school year for us to have our seniors be able to do a QR code exit profile. Is it?
We can definitely put together a survey. I think in terms of how to actually reach the students is a challenge, and to get sort of uptake and follow through, but I'll definitely take it back to the team to see what they think is possible.
Okay, we were at an event last, and I couldn't do the QR code, but Ben did it. And it only takes, it only be, what are you gonna be doing after you graduate? Just to have somebody say that would give you a file of answers to it, like, get what the.
I think with this piece, with Representative Larry and Representative Reed were saying, which I'm also interested in, is like having the data around like trajectories of students after graduation. And I mean, my understanding is that like our rates of college completion as a district are like below the national average. And that's not to like, shame us or, say that place blame anyone, but I do think, it's something that I think we need to be mindful of is like what this profile is serving. And I think it's also something that I want to flag for colleagues that like, why when we look at the report card in the future, like the graduation rates are not like the end all be all, right? Because we continue to just put so much pressure on schools to just graduate folks that aren't ready to be done, right? Then we're going to keep trying to apply this pressure on schools to just pass kids through and repeat the same cycles that we're doing. So I'd like for us to transcend that when we revisit this in the future.
Other questions? Yeah.
Thank you so much. Appreciate all the feedback.
Thank you.
All right, so thank you, Andrew, and Halsey for a thorough discussion and update. Take more, look forward to continuing our collaboration and important on important education. We will now debrief on the May public meeting panel on the topic of out-of-school time programs and policies. Members, you have in your materials a summary document with key highlights from the panel. Do members have any comments on or next steps that they would like to raise?
I guess just like a follow-up as to like how, like, I feel like we, and I don't know, this is just a wonder, it's not fully fleshed out, but like, we have panels on really important topics throughout, like the budget cycles, right? And then I feel like we have no plan to like loop back to some of the ideas with certain agencies, like, for instance, I can't remember who said it on the panel, but they said that the idea to make a one-stop shop for all out of school time, like, isn't gonna be ready until next spring. So I'm just kind of wondering how we can get updates on the progress and like the plans from the DME on that as things go. So that we can be kept in the loop on like developments, as they're going on citywide.
Well, I would just say, you all just have to tell us, because we listen to the meetings and like we meet with these people regularly. And so if you want, like, there's a list of questions that you want us to send to the DME prior to the meeting or when we speak with, to set the agenda. I think those are the type of things we often look for. It's sort of like what you all want to hear about. But I think if it's also an established body of work, most times, like what's happening with the report card, what's like those things are like standing meeting agenda items. And we meet with the DME from doing the report card stuff, so we just have to like go back and ask because we knew that was important to you all. But things that are new that maybe we haven't discussed openly as a board. I think if the board decides to take up the work, then one of the things that part of the leadership responsibility is to make sure that that stays like, and so if you want to say, you want these questions answered, and if you want it, and it's more so less of we want these questions, and like we want to be a part of the process of hearing updates on this. Because they can always choose not to answer our questions, but I think that taking a sort of not the tone we want to take. As far as like, we want to know what's the development, has it hit a snag? Like, was there, like, so if the budget gets passed next week and for that reason they take all the money out for the after school, like, or out of school time, like that is something you would want to know.
Right.
Because that would delay the project, for example. But we can really be, if we have a set of areas that the board is really interested in, we can keep those on the list. And we can have that the right part of the agenda, so that when we meet them. Just
That makes sense, and I think that kind of gets to like what, Darren and Kathleen and others have all like pushed, committee chairs to just like flush out work plans so that we can schedule things like months, like, let's circle back to this, just so that we're not dropping the ball and everything's kind of happening as they evolve.
Change online.
Thank you very much. Other discussion points? quiet, we're very, yeah. Well, members, since we are now at a point where we've had that discussion, I believe we're great actually for, that not correct, director.
That is true, but I also want to say, like, before we move on, so if there's an explicit, I think it's helpful, like, to have explicit action items before we move on. So I just want to know, like, so is it saying that as an action item? That,
I don't have a particular action item at this
Okay.
moment. I think your response helped me generate ideas for how I wanna
okay.
place action items in the future, so thank you for clarifying.
Just to, what you're talking about, Representative Williams, because we have new committees, and our committees are sort of embryonic right now. If we could, I know we just got a list of meetings. I think from today, I remember meeting with the DME and meeting with, OSSI. If we could, because we would, it would, when I was vice president, we had an agenda for the meetings. Would it be possible for us to get the agenda for the meeting? So that we could maybe add to it through our committees? You understand what I mean? Like, we have some things that we're working on in our committee that are gonna be affected by the OSSI and by the DME and by the chancellor if the chancellor.
And I would say that's always the case. I know the leadership has already worked on the agendas for the two upcoming, so we can send those out. But I think those meetings now are happening, I don't know when the next committee meetings are. I know those meetings are next week, the one with the DMV and the one with OSSI. So we can send those out, and it may be helpful if you got feedback individually to
Yeah.
send that. I just don't know if it'll have time to wait until your next.
No, I individually we could.
Thank you. Other discussion? Okay, we are gonna take a 5-minute break. It is, well, I'll say 7. It's 5:53 right now. Everybody go to turn. Minutes at 6 o'clock. It's ready to 3:30. Thank you. It's now 6 o'clock and I wanted to be very, cognizant of everybody's time this evening since we seem to be moving along. And call us back to order. Um, and so next on our agenda item, our committee reports, each committee chair will provide an update, which will be followed by members' questions should they have any. I guess I get to be up first with the administrative meeting. So with that being said, some of the things discussed in the admin meeting, with the new public information officer, which we have talked about already. We give them a nice round of applause. So thank you again. We're glad that you guys have full strength. I know that feels good, especially when you're trying to do a lot of things, you don't have all the right people in the right place. We also talked about our new fellows that are also in place as well. So that was a great conversation. One thing I wanted to announce to the whole group is that there will be an all agency retreat. I think this is the first time that all three of you guys will be going on the retreat together, because it's all three officers, is that correct?
Yes.
I don't know if either one of you guys want to talk about it a little bit more. Go right ahead.
So the all agency retreat, is something, and I would say, because I don't like to take credit, because I do, it was Jen, I think. But I think it started off, we had an all agency sort of like meeting, early last fall. That was really great, and we really wanted to take an opportunity with so many new staff in our office, and the ombudsman's office, with the ombudsman, and Dan's office, to really sort of what would it look like to be intentional about bringing our staff together. And so we are working with the contractor to do a business chemistry assessment so that they can facilitate discussion based on that for our staff. Jen, we have a cross-team committee that includes Jen, from our staff, it includes Triana from the ombudsman staff. Is it Valeria? Correct. And Valeria from Dan's team. So they're helping plan our morning. We'll be meeting at the DCHR offices in their whole suite of empty rooms. And so we're together for the morning. And then in the afternoon, we break off into individual teams to like do work planning for our particular office. And so we're excited about that. And the opportunity to really get to know the other members of the state board team in those offices. Yeah.
What we thought was so nice, because I think there's always somewhat, whether it just happened or whatever the case may be, there always seem to be people thought of themselves as three different offices, although they have different functions. We are one. And now that we're really trying to create a culture where we see ourselves as one particular office with a lot of different departments. And so this starts that process of just changing how we relate to each other, building the type of relationships that we would like to see each other, which is a good thing, I think, going forward. So happy for you guys, great ideas, and so appreciate it. Then we move to the ombudsman. As you know, she's been here for a couple of weeks now. I don't know if it's been a whole month at this particular time.
A month or two.
Yes, a month or 2 weeks at this particular point. Just listening to her and what her experience has been as the ombudsman, how she's settling in, where some areas that she'd like to see some changes or some things. She did discuss very briefly some of how she's managing cases for each individual and how she's going to do that to make sure that it's done in a way that we can make sure we're answering when there's complaints and things that come into our office, but also making sure that it's equitable across the staff members and how that's done. I think it's a little bit new for some of the staff members, so they're going through that whenever there's change in the office. You know, there's some people readily accept it. There's others who, like, I don't know, I like the old way, so to speak. So we talked about some of the dynamics that's going on there. But it seems to be going really well. I saw her leaving as I was parking, so I got to speak to her very briefly. She was walking out just as I was coming in, so I got to say hi to her. But very happy that she's here and it's going along. And then the final thing is our chief student advocate spoke for a little while, Dan, David. Just a brief update. There was nothing new or, that to really report on, but just how everything was going. I believe it's coming out a little time off. So there wasn't a whole bunch of change or reporting that he had. So that kind of concludes my update report. Were there any questions that anyone had for me? And that.
Yeah, quick comment. I like the idea of the retreat. Is there a date that's been set for that?
Yeah, it's June 21st.
My bag is
Cool.
Just curious.
Yeah, so I will make sure that, like, to post on social media, like that would be the thing that the office itself is closed, to also staff to be there.
So plan accordingly because they will not be available for it, okay? Any other questions?
Just a quick comment. I met with, ombudsman this morning and just to say hello, because we had connected on a case, but she definitely is open to meeting with other members if you want to just introduce yourself.
And I appreciate that, Representative Henderson, because I think we all should like just spend a little time and just kind of get to know her and how she's working. Specifically, you know, you got an award and there might be something that's made specifically for your award that you might see that might be well enough, or to learn a little bit what are some of the things that she's getting complaints about that deal with your award, like if she's receiving something that's particular to your award. So great suggestion, great thing to do, but we'll suggest it for anybody who has awards that they're over to meet with. Any other comments?
Yes, could, she introduced herself to us at our next business meeting?
You mean a working session?
Working session.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, whatever you want. Whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
we used to have the student advocate and the, ombudsman as part of a business meeting. That hasn't happened for a while.
Well, in the time, the year and a half that I've been here, they've only come to do their annual reports in the fall, which is coming up this fall. I'm not quite sure what happened before 2022, but I can also just go back and go reach out to Alex. But I think whatever the board would like to see happen,
I think
both the
that-
ombudsman
that was-
and the chiefs. Yeah,
I mean, because I was on the panel, I know who she is, but I think it would be helpful for her to just give a vision to.
Ask her to come next meeting. Okay. With that being said, I get to turn it over to Representative Henderson for grade 4-5 to give college careers and readiness report.
Thank you, Vice President Patterson. So we met on May 24th. We had Representative Goulet came to talk about a resolution on ending legacy admissions. And he is working on a draft resolution that he will bring to the committee. And the committee will discuss at our next meeting, and we're looking towards circulating it for the full board prior to the July working session. So that you all will all get a chance to look at and give input. We're continuing work on graduate requirements. It's paralleling what OSSI is doing. Kathleen has done a lot of work to ground us in kind of what's required of us and what's there already. And that's what she shared earlier about, for example, there are no federal requirements on specific graduation requirements. I will be working with her to propose some engagement plans to bring back to the committee at our next meeting. Representative Chang is reporting to us on the progress of literacy investments in the budget. There has been some progress there with funding more of the literacy task force recommendations to get more training, but that's still pending the budget process. He is going to be working with Kathleen to propose to the committee some sort of event or convening around kindergarten training, literacy training. So that's something we'll be talking about at our next meeting as well. There were two issues that we've been working on, math and AI. With math, we kind of pressed pause so that we could listen to the June panel next week, and we'll be incorporating that to see how we want to proceed on the math resolution. And we passed one resolution on AI to identify it as a priority for us. And Representative Best is continuing work to engage with other agencies to see where we want to move that.
In the engagement with other agencies, did you just see the little team? Because oftentimes they'll reach back out, I didn't know I did with that before. That's just helpful for us to just keep, you don't have to be in them, it's just for us to have a view of the information.
Sounds good.
Any questions? Representative Anderson?
Before the questions, I just wanna throw in, an ad, if there are any agencies that you think that we should be connecting with, please send an email to myself and CC Representative Anderson.
Sure. Do we see the graduation profile living in this committee?
Yes, this is one of the,
Well, graduation
Yes.
requirements live in this community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Just a clarifying question.
right. I would agree that yes.
I mean, today is the first concrete communication we've had from Aussie about their timeline.
Yes.
So,
Since they got paid, those things kind of happening.
yeah, I mean, we knew this work was going on, and so that's why we're.
Questions or comments?
I guess one other question is the committee discuss anything around like vocational education or like clarifying that? Like, I know that one of the locations which I looped some board, I think board leadership and then Andrew Gallen, like, there's an expansion of the facility over by Union Market that we have that's growing by like 50 students a year. But I'm wondering kind of like, I've heard from a lot of constituents and even students that they want to see like more opportunities earlier on to know that if they want to go to a particular trade or learn something, they can. So I'm just curious if that was on the committee's radar, and if it's not, it's okay. But just,
It hasn't been an area of focus to this point.
There's a horribly well-kept secret. That whole school itself. You know, we brought that up before at our meetings about publicizing opportunity to be in that. It hasn't happened.
yeah, I think there's robotics and like a couple other,
No, it's just that it's,
like, it's just very high tech.
But even opportunities like Phelps, I think are underutilized.
because we have vocational schools.
Right.
City, but old heads, and I'm talking about people older than I, who remember how we used to have all these vocational choices,
Right.
especially in the high school. We have none now in the general option.
Yeah, my goal, and I don't know if this is imminent committee work sometime down the road or whatnot, is to just clarify for the public what exists where and how people can access it. So that maybe it's something we ask that as they're rolling out the MyDC process the following year, that it gets publicized, because otherwise families have to do a lot of legwork to be able to compare and contrast what programs exist at different places.
Bus advertising. Seriously, like you go to Petworth and McFarland Junior High, McFarland Middle School is all over the walls of Petworth Metro. It's been there all year long. That's fine for one of my middle schools, but it's also like they can advertise stuff there. QR code.
All right, were there any other questions? Well, that brings me to you, Representative O'Leary, and educator experts report.
We met for the first time, Representative Williams, Representative Henderson, and our director, Jennifer.
I heard it was a great meeting. so-
We had a really, really good meeting. And we covered a lot of general information, as you can see in the report. And I was bringing that up to Andrew about that, because we want to find out about teachers and what's being done to help teachers stay in the system. So teacher retention is one of the focuses. And also induction programs. How does the system get teachers into the programs? And then how does the system keep teachers in the school. Not, so retention, but retention happens or attrition happens because those things aren't. So we're just starting to work on those kinds. And hopefully, because OSSI's coming up with a report, I guess as we speak, about the educator workforce report. So that's gonna be an engine for us to be able to do. Does that cover it?
Yeah, I was just curious, was there any updates or communication with OSSI about the workforce report?
Not yet. Hopefully.
I forgot to ask you. Shoot.
We can add that to the agenda because the meeting is on Monday.
Oh,
Yeah. And when I look at their website, it said they have some things from 2023, but I just thought there was gonna be something more updated this month. And that can really help guide the committee's work in a lot of ways.
right. Well, that would be good. We'll be second. Answers my other question. If that's your position. Thank you.
Was there another issue we talked about? It's definitely retention.
There were three. Those were the three things.
Oh, I think also evaluation, right?
Yeah, teacher evaluation, reduction program. I mentioned it though.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Well, there, I get to move to student experience and engagement, Representative Williams report.
Thank you. Yep, so everyone has the notes from the meeting. Darren, thank you for making them so thorough. We had the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Justice come and present on safe passage. It was really informative meeting. Some of the highlights that I'll quickly mention about updates, they're focusing on program monitoring with quarterly audits, increased communication with their staff, reporting and data collection, including a new reporting tool that flags key things within 24 hours that happen, and then training. I have some more kind of questions of like what the training like looks like, and Darren and I sent over some follow-up questions with them. But then they also said that they have the kind of areas that they're trying to push on, like communication between ambassadors and schools. So like they have a daily meeting that they'll kind of share what things come up, but there's not necessarily like clear protocols for how they're communicating or onboarding with individual school communities. And then Representative O'Leary mentioned just like the need in particular, particularly in Ward 1, but also, you know, at Roosevelt around like Spanish speaking ambassadors. And then they asked for our collective help at promoting and pushing out like job opportunities. Like they're still trying to hire people. So that's something that they asked for our support with. The other things that we kind of talked about is still, we're gonna follow up still with regards to truancy. And looking at kind of a clear plan, just to circle back to the last Everyday Counts Task Force. There wasn't a clear role for the state board yet on like our lane in this broader conversation. So that's something that I still want us to identify as to how we can support the you know, the higher levels of absenteeism that we're experiencing as a city. And then the other two things were around, we're still trying to narrow some of our topics around public safety. So if other I don't know, do other members have suggestions for us as like particular pieces of safety that you would like the committee to explore more? Because we're trying to identify a particular question that could be useful for the city rather than focusing on everything. So kind of want to pause there to see if there's any input.
I was on a call with Commander McCall, who's a new, I think the newly appointed commander in 70, because there's been like extremely violent events like on Marionberry. So you have like Ketchum, DC Prep, a couple of childcare centers involved. And we were as a group just talking about the need for differentiated supports and that understanding of like, we were reflecting and talking about like, you know, some of the citywide like initiatives didn't necessarily like help the situation in that corridor. So whatever the safety strategies, or as we're looking at safety, especially around schools, that raise like these events are happening right in front of school. Oh, and a new school possibly coming. So like 3 schools possibly impacted. And we were just talking about like, instead of doing like broad sweeping, everybody gets this or everybody gets that, like really looking at like what do corridors or what do pockets of schools need? To like, make things safe versus saying like, let's do all traffic safety around schools, or let's do all of this, like really kind of doing individualized safety supports. So I'm not sure like where that fits into like the committee's work, but just kind of keeping that conversation in mind that we're like, they're rolling out like a strategy of they're going to patrolling starting tomorrow for a weekend and piloting that. Another question is like, then how does that loop into like the other mechanisms for safety, which are like our safe passage workers or the ones office, those kind of things. So just making sure like whatever our solutions are, we're not just saying like, okay, everybody's gonna get this, but like, can we really look deeply at like what are the needs, not just of the schools, but like the surrounding community, because the schools are a part of that community, if that makes sense. Also missed the meeting for C, but I want to throw it out because I think it was a relevant conversation that we just had earlier this week.
Kind of, follow what Dr. Reese just said. For me, it has always been, as far as the question is coordination or across certain things. As she just mentioned, they're doing some new strategies in Ward 8 through 7D. But I'm always curious as to how is that disseminated and coordinated amongst the people who need to kind of understand. I think that has always been a lack of. They come out with a new strategy, and it gets kind of like compartmentalized between whoever is supposed to be in charge of it. And it never becomes a concerted kind of effort to do something to address problems, stuff like that. So for me, talk about it is consistently, what is the coordination? How are you identifying those particular problems and things in those areas? And then what's the feedback once you do those things? I have not seen that done well. I keep referencing back at a point when I served kind of like a ogre back in the day, much back in the day. And we had these hot spots, and we brought all the agencies together and we kind of met on the issues that were doing the work. So say if you have Woodland Terrace, you would have somebody from social services, all these different departments. And we would come and we had a regular meeting because that was a designated hotspot, and everybody who needed to bring resources to that spot met on a regular basis because that area had now been identified as that. I think in this temperature in which we have right now of violence and things happening, something of that nature needs to happen because the coordination doesn't happen. They don't have the type of meetings and designations that they used to have. So it kind of like just stays. It's just kind of like people say, well, I did this and my numbers are this for me in 7D, but I don't know what it is for violent interrupters because I really don't know them. I know some of them, if they reach out, I don't really know what's going on with Safe Passage because I don't have control of the Safe Passage. And it's really, the kids take advantage of it, not to say y'all kids and stuff like that. Students take advantage of it, those who want to get into activities. They take advantage of it because they know they're not coordinated.
Right.
So for me, it's always been about coordination.
It just makes me wonder, and maybe this could be useful for us, and I don't, like, we can continue to refine the scope and focus, but like how the communication channels, between, like, I don't want to say too broadly stakeholders, but schools,
Right.
Agencies, and just what does that really look like? I think, so I don't know if anyone really has clarity around that, but.
I think
Real quick. We've done some of that for the LEA that I work for. So like the 3 that are in the area, Gibb College Prep, Dunbar, and McKenna. Regular meetings, conversations, coordinate on everything from violent interrupters, regular meetings, Metro Police, for that quarter, because we had such a push from Union Market to kind of cartel all the stuff that was happening around Union Market. Since those 3 schools kind of are around it. I've seen it done that way, but I don't think every area does that. When you have a coordination of schools where you're seeing a lot of things, whether they're middle school or high school, they're all feeling the same pain, so to speak, but none of them have coordinated together to say, look, we're gonna do this together, we're gonna address, we're gonna meet on a regular basis. I mean, and currently, between those, they meet every Monday, and they talk about what happened on the weekends. So we have intel, like, there was a fight at this game, this happened. So you need to be aware that these students, maybe come back a little bit riled up, or whatever the case may be. That's a model that I think is central because the people know each other. We actually have the position that, Councilman Parker has tried to legislate. We have a safety director at, KCP. That is his sole job, is to coordinate safety between the schools externally and internally. And Representative Parker came to see it, but there needs to be coordination. That's a model that you can look at, but it's not citywide at the current time.
I'm also curious about how each agency define their roles to each other in the community.
Right.
So for instance, like that situation that happened at Brookland Metro, people were like, we want violence interrupters. And I'm like, but the intensity of that situation, I don't even think a violence interrupter could have intervened. They might have been able to be proactive if they noticed the beef. But with a weapon, you're gonna have to, insert MPD for a variety of reasons. So, or Metro Police, whatever, so it's not clear to me or community of like, who does what in this scope of like, because again, talking to the commander, it was like, I was scared to even mention like a violence interrupter, because I know she's just like, I'm sick of these high powered weapons that are going off in our community. And she's just like, we're cracking down, and we're gonna do a communication strategy, but we're cracking down. I'm like, cool, but I'm also noticing that we have other components, but there was no mention, I'm not blaming her, but like to your point, there was no mention of like safe passage workers and what is their role, is it to report, is it to scope out, who are they reporting to, and is that pathway reporting to all the agencies who, like, hey, safe passage got it, oh, hey, the violence interrupters got it, like, it's not well defined for the community of like when things go where and how each group works. And I'm scared, like sometimes the answer to really violent events is like, we need a safe passage worker. And I'm like, no, because those people got to go home to their families, they're not equipped, there's liability, all the good things like that would be like protective of them. So I'm just kind of like in the work, like, can we encourage our agency partners to say like, this is our role, this is what we do, this is what we communicate with you, or this is how we communicate together. I don't think people like understand the difference between all the different entities and how they can kind of collaborate.
Bringing to the point, I'll come over to you, Representative Henderson, in just a second, because I know you have a question and comment, is that Mr. Davis, our student advocate chief, just participated in the task force on safety. I think they released what that report was, so to speak. It would be great to hear from him what came out of that meeting. Because those are some of the questions that were asked, stuff like that have him to give us kind of like a debrief of that from the state board, so that we'll kind of understand, what came out, but also what they're gonna do. Because I've seen too many meetings where we have a great task force. Here's your report, there it sits from then on, and the problem persists. So love to hear about what's going to happen, because I know for a fact that they moved from DME over to the other office, the other deputy mayor for public safety and justice. There's so much movement going on, but the violence keeps persisting. And so we'd love to hear, if we can put it on the agenda, that we'd love to hear from them, as we put him on that committee, so that we kind of get that kind of information.
But Dan also is supposed to be convening all of these cross-sector partners and work with his team, put out like that specific thing, like who does what in the school community, like safety. He goes to school. So I know that like that has been a big part of the work that Dan has been doing. And so, I mean, we can also update you on that at the next meeting. But I know for a fact that's some work that he's been doing. And people have said that like convening those parties to communicate with each other because they don't talk to each other. And so, but that's been some of the work that
intel from the community, because like I'm in my home most part 24 hours frequently, and like I'll take this instance that happened between like the 29th through June 1st. There was a big shooting. No one was injured. I mean, it was like, there's going to be another shooting. And another 2 days later, there was a shooting and there was death. Things are going to calm down, unfortunately, because or things are gonna be retaliatory. But it's just interesting, like, as a community member, I'm not trained in safety, but I know those patterns of if this happens,
Right.
this doesn't happen, then it doesn't stop. Oh, that happened, it's gonna calm down for a little bit. But like even calling, does DCPS know, hey, something happened last night. The block is a little, hot. Your students are walking through that block, or even DC Prep. I think some of the school level leaders, it's intermittent, sometimes talk to each other. I believe at one point Ketchum and DC Prep were talking, for instance. As principals change, I don't know if that relationship keeps going, but it's like we want to make sure our students, are safe. And as community members, we have knowledge of knowing like that pocket moved from this corner to this corner. What's the impact on students? Is that a route that students are taking? So I would look for pathways like how can community members communicate some of those things that we're seeing? Because I know I can do it as state board rep, but I'm like, what will my neighbors know? Versus they're just seeing certain things happen and they feel like they don't have any pathways to like communicate with that. And then, can the school act in a way that's like, all right, maybe we need to keep the gate closed for this week, or, those kind of different things. I'm not sure, like, again, the coordination efforts.
Yeah.
And I know we move on a school year basis, like we're school board, so we're basically thinking about the school year. But a lot of this activity, as you said, there's rhythms to things and violence and stuff like that. We kind of forecast what's going to happen next after summer. But summers, we always know it gets hot. It gets hot as far as activity and violence. When weather's nice, everybody's out, things happen. And we need to be able to understand how that happens and keep kids safe, even when it's not the school year. But to actually understand who's going to do what's the strategy over the summer. Those things are not communicated to us. I know we've talked a lot, but Representative Henderson had a question.
Yeah, I guess it's reinforcing the points that you brought up. I think, after the Brookland incident, parents in that area were asking, well, where was safe passage? So not only what would safe passage have done, but it's also not a safe passage area. So I think there is a lot of misunderstanding just because of the terminology. And like when we had Maya Duggan on the panel, like, when I asked her, I took that when Paid is talking about safe passage, they're talking broadly, not a safe passage program.
Right.
And so I think there's definitely some misunderstanding. And then I think, the model of the 3 high schools and the coordination within that geography is really important. But that also needs to be coordinated with all the geographies that the students are coming from.
Exactly.
And so, back to your point, like the intelligence, it's got to be broader even than those.
Because ANC should be brought into it, the whole thing, because you got Trinidad and Ivy City and what happens with 37th Group and stuff like that. That needs to be broadcasted on and coordinated on a better basis.
So things that are happening in those school areas are connected to things that are happening far away.
I believe, Director, you had a
This is, we had a panel, when was it, November or October of Safe Passage panel, 2023, I want to say. Remember, and what Representative Reed is talking about as far as
I remember
cross
that.
communication. Remember, we had all those people
They're
talking,
growing up there.
but they weren't talking to each other.
Right.
I'm having flashbacks right now, which are really bad flashbacks as far as nothing's being done.
Yeah, and I think that's where we can really leverage our role, right? Like everyone else kind of has their agency mission, and like our agency mission is to like amplify like the public interest in this issue. And so like I think that to a couple of these things, like that could be where we try to make clarity for people, because that was one thing that Siada had said in our meeting, is that like the public is conceiving of safe passages, like every student should get to and from school safely. But no, it is a program that only exists in certain areas and only at 5 metro stations. And like, those are the places that they've chosen to devote resources. So we need to misspell the idea that every metro and every student is like covered in this one.
Different groups that do it too.
Yeah.
There's spy training.
And I think that's the resources, right? Like we're
That's
so
what we talked
resource
about
rich in this way regards. Like I had students who are studying gun violence who went to Baloo a couple weeks ago because there was a training to what to do in the case of a shooting, and so like that was done professionally, they learned a lot, like, they were able to then connect with other community resources. But like, unless you know about it, like, it's not something you can access. So that's something we can follow up on. So that's been really constructive. Thank you all for your input. And then the last thing here, with regards to the committee was just, some updates on the voter registration initiative. So, this is also a new business. So I think I'm gonna move, just allow us to move forward and then I'll circle back to it there.
We definitely have you on the list for new business. I think the last report we have, but not the least, the most important for us is our student advisory committee. Representative Washington.
Our final and most recent student advisory committee meeting of the year was last May, Monday the 13th. We celebrated our graduating senior committee members and we finalized our roundtable planning. For an update, we put a hold on our roundtable for this year. The next year reps gonna have the option to pick it up, but we just, yeah, it's here. And we also heard a presentation from OSSI on school improvement plans and we passed 2 resolutions unanimously. SR 24-12, establishing state priorities for artificial intelligence in education. The SAC had recommendations for an increase in pay for teachers who completed the proposed AI training programs, incentives for teachers to stay in their teaching role with AI usage in the classroom, and further recommendations for the continuous review and update of AI student policy as AI technology grows over time. The SAC also had a desire for more information about what the educator training for AI usage may look like and who would be administering that training. And they further recommended the utilization of a by-use notification program for users and the anonymization of users by default in terms of any data collection. And we also passed SR 24-13, recommending a greater commitment to dual enrollment programs in the District of Columbia. And we had a few recommendations for an increase in funding and availability for satellite schools offering dual enrollment programs. And we had recommendations for offering transportation for students to attend dual enrollment college sites, notably for students attending schools in Ward 7 or 8. And we also wanted more information on the establishment of school-based enrollment coordinators. The SAC application, as was stated earlier, has been open for the next school year. And we asked members if they can to share the application with students in their respective boards. And since this is our last SAC statement, we're grateful to have the opportunity to serve as members of the SAC.
Appreciate that. Thank you guys for all the work that you guys did. It was great to participate in bestowing of stoles and everything like that. That's always a really cool thing. You guys have seen it or participate in it, to give people the SBOE stoles and everything like that, that hopefully y'all gonna wear when y'all graduate, all right?
Wear mine.
Send us pictures of some stuff like that, but that was just really cool. And, the work on the resolutions, was really great. I appreciate, I know I had one in there about the dual enrollment, and what you guys added was really, really great. So I appreciate the work. The revisions that you guys that went into it and made the final. So thank you very much. Remember, are there any external committee updates or reports we want to share? Seeing no raising of the hands, well,
I don't think we have a new meeting date. There should be a final, sorry, I'm joking. There's a final everyday council meeting in June, in which they're going to try and publicize recommendations for how to move forward. And the other thing to mention is that the Attorney General's office is also very interested in potentially collaborating, because that's something that they want to try to tackle in the fall as well.
thank you. Any other external meeting, committee meetings? Comments?
I'm sorry.
Go right ahead, Representative Davidson.
Thank you. The Research Collaborative met and they will be participating in the math panel next week. For some of the past work they've done in collaboration with Josh Boots and his organization. That's slipping my mind at the moment, but
Power K-12.
Yep, our K-12.
And just a plug to like keep them in mind. If if you see research opportunities or people who are doing research that you think should be spread to a wider audience, keep them in mind, and you can let me know if you want to make a connection to the collaboration. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Those being done, we'll now move on to our new business. I want to ask members if they have any additional items of business to add to the following list. And they're on the screen as well as you can see, they're the Student Advisory Committee flyer. Recognizing high schools with higher voter, registration rates. Talked about, CR 24-2 honoring Superintendent, Christina Grant, who will leave shortly after our next meeting, which will be her last days that week that we present. Are there other things that we want to add to this list?
I have one new item. Just want us to circle back to the July and August meeting date.
The absenteeism and discipline hearing will be, the council hearing, they decide on the date. And the NASB conference in October.
Nice. Where's the location? I'm excited. I'm excited.
Okay. That being said, since you're already asking questions, Representative Williams, we'll go into new business. We'll start now. You can start with, the first one with Student Advisory Committee flyer. Director Butler.
As I mentioned in my ED report, the application is open, but we put a copy of the flyer in your folders for tonight. If anyone else needs any additional printed copies, or you have any community meetings coming up, please let us know and we will print them and have them prepared for you to pick up from staff so that you can give them out. If you want them in a collector, again, let us know. We will get those ready for you for your designated event that you may have in your work. Or if you want to go, again, we've already contacted all the principals personally, but if you're going to a school, you want to share some more information, please feel free to reach out to the staff at Black Plus Board.
Thank you, ma'am. That being said, we get to go back to Representative Williams, to talk about recognizing high schools with high voter registration rates.
Thank you. All right, so I have two items and two asks. So the first thing is the National Women's Foundation has congratulation cards for all seniors graduating in DC. What they want from us, this is the first ask, is which schools we want them to drop them off at. So like if you could send me or me and Darren maybe like an email that just says like, if you know of a particular person to get in contact with at like your schools, or you just want to say like yes or no to your high schools, but they've been, this is like a national strategy that they've been working with like Pennsylvania schools, Michigan schools, and other schools, and like they just want, but the congratulation cards have a QR code at the bottom of it, which is like a last ditch effort to encourage students to register if they haven't already. So they've had an intern that's designed them and they've been able to print them. So, and they're willing to do the work. So they just kind of need any point people if you could. Yeah.
Is there a reason not to say all?
I don't see it. Yeah. Yeah, so if you, but just, I don't want to like step on anyone's toes or make a decision on behalf of the board. So if there could be some more buy-in with that, if you would like them to distribute those, then they will. And they're trying to do that before the DCPS graduations. And I guess next week, but the following week. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is that and in terms of recognizing the high schools with the high voter registration rates, we don't have like a clear citywide strategy yet. But if leadership could bring it up in the next meeting with OSSI as to when would work for them to coordinate with the Board of Elections, Andrew has said that he would be willing to work with the Board of Elections to just cross-reference data on how many students have registered at schools. There's no like individual names that are being shared, but just like, hey, as a city, we're at 65% and these schools are at 70 and these are at 80. But like, that'd be one thing, is to like put a plan in place for when we can find that number, and then thinking of a date that we can recognize schools in the fall that can also inspire, voter registration before the general. So if we could maybe do that like in August or September. Any questions on either of those two items?
Director Butler, if you could put that in our meeting, that's a question that we can bring down to. One request.
And I would just,
Agenda.
yeah, we can say that,
That's the audit. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
and I would just offer to that Representative Williams that again, in terms of when to recognize it, every year there's a National Voter Registration Day, which is September 17th.
Okay.
It's just naturally, a lot of different organizations and
Yeah.
events. I'm sure we have a meeting around that time. I don't know what day the 17th is, but like, that may be something like, that's already been done nationally. So like, a lot of people do registration drives. So we wanted to recognize what, again, what schools have done by the end of this school year, but then also we have a drive to have these people registered for the general election that happens in November. That may also be a thing, but
Is it Tuesday?
well, the next day,
So-
so you can recognize people that next day.
So I appreciate you knowing that, because I had no idea what was the best of him, but I did not know that day. And so I appreciate you.
You
having
have
that
to
knowledge.
counsel for the latest.
Okay, thank you. All right, was there anything else?
No, that's it for that. So just if you, just members, if you can email that to Darren and myself, and then we'll pass it along to the National Women's Foundation.
Thank you so much. I believe I have the next one, which is something around CR 24-2 honoring Superintendent Dr. Grant. I believe you have a copy in your folder. I believe, basically, I think we've done some great research on what she's done over her career to put into this particular resolution, proposed resolution. Were there any questions or comments about it as you look through it? We'll be recognizing her next week. So we pushed up our meeting to recognize Juneteenth, so our meeting again is next week. I'm doing that for the Bill public as well. Remind them that's not the following week, but next week on the 12th. It's our next meeting. But if you want to look over it or if you have comments, is there someone that you should speak to?
Me, Kathleen.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So, you
feedback
know,
by like Friday at noon would be
That's what I
helpful,
was
so
gonna
that
ask.
we can
It has to happen in fast order.
update it, have it finalized for next week, so.
Remember, we do have to post a lot of this stuff, so we want to give it the required amount to post it. So we want to give them an opportunity to get whatever information that you may have. So if you could, look it over, see if you have any comments or anything like that, and get the, if you do, get that to Kathleen and expedited manner. Great.
Or you can go in and comment on the document in SharePoint. It's just not on Dropbox, so it could be a little bit surprise for Dr. Rand.
And just so that we will kind of change, it's probably not, we will kind of change the way we do our meetings that day. It'll kind of like be the one that we did for Dr. Edlin, so that we could, you know, we know she only stays with us a short amount of time. We're not gonna make her wait till the end for all the resolutions and everything like that. We'll change up the agenda that day, next week, so that we can do the presentation, pictures, all those type of things. And then get back to the regular other work stuff that we're doing. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, the other new business that people put on here as well, we want to have a discussion about the July meeting date.
Yeah, I wanted to circle back to that, and, just, I guess, make a motion that, at the public meeting, we vote to, add a meeting in August. I know that you had mentioned previously that it might not work for your schedule, and I understand that. But at the same time, like, I feel like it would be helpful to move that to August. I don't feel strongly that we have, the meeting in July. So my vote or recommendation would be that instead of meeting in July, we choose to meet in August so that we can get ahead of things before the upcoming school year.
I'd like to oppose this strenuously. I mean, we set it out together and we voted on a schedule at the beginning of the year, which then people relied on to set plans. If we want to switch the schedule up for next year, we should do so at the beginning of the year when we set the schedule. People made plans, and I don't want to miss a vote. Like, that's a big deal to me, is being there for every vote. I'm a commitment to this. I want to be there for votes. So I think we shouldn't be doing that. I think we should set a schedule and then stick to the schedule and not switch it up, you know, based on something we could have foreseen back when the year started. I think secondly, I think we should keep the July meeting, and we've got at least one resolution that will move through committee, hopefully, depending on what the committee approves it. And that's an important one on banning legacy emissions, and I think it may be necessary to help the council get momentum over the summer on that issue. I think if we want to add a meeting, what I would ask is that we don't add the voting component to that meeting, just essentially have a meeting where we have public testimony, because the whole point of having the meeting in August purportedly was that we wanted to give parents an opportunity who had concerns about school opening to be able to express those concerns to the board. I don't think there's been any discussion that the board would need to approve resolutions at that meeting. So what I would ask is that if we're going to do this, that we keep the July meeting, we keep the resolutions as we scheduled. And then if we want to set either a roundtable or a meeting that doesn't have votes for August, we do that. Now, I have no preference next year, whether or not we switch the July and August
We
meetings.
vote on the calendar for next year.
That's fine, like but we should vote on it, and then people can, because people have to make plans months in advance here. And then they should be able to do so, both staff and members. So like right now, it's June and we're voting on changes for July or August, which I don't think is fair. I don't think it makes sense. And I think we need to plan better ahead if we're gonna do this. So my ask would be twofold. One, we continue with the July meeting as we schedule. Two would be that if we're going to do it in August, that we just limit it to either a public roundtable or we have no votes, because both of those would satisfy what reportedly was the concern. And that next year, if we want to switch this up and get rid of a July meeting and do an August meeting, I have no objection to that, but we should do it when we set the schedule. So that's my thought on it.
Further discussion?
I agree.
Which person are you agreeing with?
I agree with what Eric said about not voting in August and meeting in July. I don't think we were talking this year about getting rid of July anyway. We were just talking about in the future, if we were gonna have a month off, it would be in July in the future.
Right.
So that my agreement is that we stick to the schedule and we also add an August meeting without voting.
Yeah, and that will give me the opportunity to watch the public testimony and maybe even participate virtually, but we don't have the technology yet to vote virtually. So I really appreciate your comments on that, Representative O'Leary. So thank you.
Representative Williams, I would like to give you time to kind of like.
Sure, yeah, I mean, everything you said sounds reasonable to me. I think, the reason that I mentioned not doing the July meeting was just to like be respectful and like of staff time and capacity, because and I'm totally cool with not having a voting meeting in August. I think the purpose wasn't to pass resolutions or to, not be able to plan accordingly, but more so to serve as a venue for the public before the school year starts. So I guess I would want to revise that then at this point to just, is it possible to not do a working session in August, but just do a public meeting?
That's what was gonna be my question to you is, what does that mean for the staff?
Okay, so there's.
Did Andrew Gall say earlier today that he planned to return in August?
I can't hear you.
I believe Aussie, part of the timeline they shared earlier today was returning in August.
Yeah, so like there are a couple things separate from like external people. So in August, that is the meeting where normally the ombudsman and the chief do navigate come. And that's where the budget conversations for FY 26 start for the agency. So they come to that working session. Normally, and this may change with a new superintendent, but normally no one in the ag cluster will meet with us in the month of August because they're preparing for school to go back and they're supporting teachers and educators. But again, that may change. Andrew presented something today, said they want to be at the working session. But I don't know, again, if that will change based on who the superintendent is. I do know like that has made plans to be out of town because we do it based on the schedule. But if that needs to change, like, and there's also, we did not reserve room. So once you all approve the calendar, we submit that to DGS so that they will hold the reservations. And it's become harder to get reservations because now MPD is fully here. So if we're now trying to book in August, we didn't have that on the schedule, so they don't have a reservation for us to have. Oh, but I'm not saying no one else should probably be at Old Council Chamber. It may very well be available, but it's just.
So you would let us know before next week
About,
about the schedule.
The availability, but first we have to decide if we're gonna have a vote, if we're gonna move that.
yes, that's the next one. We can always check the availability. You can email them. You send the email in the morning, they'll let us know.
Could I make a suggestion that may solve both of these? If we don't have a room, would it be possible to do a virtual meeting, like a virtual roundtable? Where, because the point is really to hear from parents. So if you have like a Zoom meeting or a virtual meeting, we may get more interest. I mean, we tried to do the budget meeting here where we had it in person, and we had limited interest from that. I think a lot of the reasons were probably because people were going to council where, you know, the decisions were actually being made. I think it was spring break, dovetailing on one side of spring break. And then also, I think people just maybe didn't want to come down here on a Saturday. I'm not sure. I think the virtual meetings, we've seen better attendance at than we have our in-person meetings. So that might make it easier for parents to communicate concerns to the board. It would eliminate your need to reserve a room, and it would still be providing the feedback that we desire on those concerns. So, I mean, that could be called, I think, a public roundtable that we could do virtually without having to worry about overtime or DGS or any of that.
We did have, since I've been on the board, we had one August meeting. But that was, I believe it was 2021. And it was before the opening of school after COVID.
Yeah.
And we had the largest numbers of people ever to come to it, and it was virtual.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
And it should eliminate the staff issues too, because it's going to take a lot fewer staff to staff a virtual meeting potentially than to do an in-person one in the chamber.
Hey, that's how we do stuff.
So I'll,
Comment, Rob,
Well, it still requires.
yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe one of us members has the savvy to post ourselves. No. What do you think? I wasn't said that.
No, I know. I'm just saying.
I saw the staff get elated about that suggestion.
Handle the virtual.
There would be staff.
Yeah. We got a lot to hang.
Although they did get happy real quick, like, okay, we don't have to go. Okay, so, I mean, thank you,
I don't know.
Representative Marshall.
I don't know how relevant this may be. I know the main audience is for parents, but if students wanted to testify like ahead of, I guess, July, ahead of August and school opening, I feel like they'd be less likely to participate if it's virtual, just like as the after effect of quarantine. And I know a lot of students don't like virtual meetings or don't participate as much in them as if the event was on full in person. So I feel like that might be a concern for trying to get students to also come in and share the concerns ahead of school. But if the main audience is parents, I don't think it's an issue, just like a student
A
perspective.
little louder, a little bit more
I
positive.
was say, if the main audience is parents, then that's not too much of an issue, but just from like a student perspective, I wouldn't be too, like I said, fine to encourage you. To share my thoughts.
Yeah, and I think it could be to anyone. I mean, my thought for it was just like a guiding question of like, what issues should the state board be focused on entering this school year? And so that could be advocates, that could be, you know, whoever wants to, and then we can kind of promote it, but just as a way that we show that we're trying to meet people where they're at to some degree, so that we're not just like setting an agenda that we think works in silos, but like we're opening it up to say like, how can we make sure we have a successful school year? What's on your mind? You know, come let us know. And just using it as like a listening session.
And I do think if you're going to do it, virtually, you don't have to stick to like a Wednesday. Do it every week that you all would like to do. But I would also suggest not doing it the week before school starts, because if there are issues, schools are already getting ready at that point. So it's too late to go back to them. So I would say hold it earlier in August, so that if you want schools or DCPS or whoever to respond to something, that they have the time to do so before they actually start getting teachers back in the building, preparing classrooms.
So could we do it like, we're doing this month's second Wednesday?
If that is what you
Always off shoes.
yeah, and so and since it's virtual, it doesn't have to be like a board meeting, because if you call it a board meeting, that means you have to have quorum. And if you don't have quorum, then we can't start. So I would move away from the term meeting in general. That requires
Do we need
quorum.
a forum and a roundtable?
No,
A roundtable has a specific definition. in
yeah, that is.
The SOPs, but yeah, it was like
We
a
can call it
public
something else.
forum or
Call
something
it
like
back
that.
to
Yeah.
forum,
Back to school day.
back to
Something
school
like
forum
that.
or something, or.
Back to school.
Yeah, I-
Right, back to school round
Just let me
table.
know
however
if
you wanna
it's,
Like your decision over now.
right. I think so.
Okay, so if what I'm hearing, the proposal actually, the business is that we're gonna have a vote to have in August. What, however we term it, it's not a meeting. but
Back to
it's a-
school engagement.
Back, and I appreciate that term. Yes, that's right. So we can call it that. We're gonna vote on that in our public meeting, is that correct?
If that is something you all would like to add. to
That's
the
what
agenda.
that's what I'm hearing, advocated for. There will be no votes on anything that has to be passed or anything like that. It will be a engagement session.
The public is invited.
And the public is invited to discuss things for the upcoming school year. Is that correct?
Since it's not a meeting, can we vote to do that here now?
Yes, because it's not adding an official meeting. If you want to have an engagement session, you all can make a decision to do that. Oh, good.
Okay,
Do we need to know the date now, or can we just?
we can do pending that day,
Okay, pending. it.
pending,
We'll leave it to the admin committee, just like the day.
okay?
Yeah.
Don't throw it over here.
Yeah.
Like, I appreciate
I'm
that.
open to that.
Thank you, Dr. Reed.
No problem.
Thank you, Dr. Reed.
I'm delegate.
Responsibility of Nate. I appreciate that.
Y'all need a motion?
We need a motion with what you said.
Okay.
Can you propose the motion?
Oh, I move that we have an August engagement session with the date determined by the admin committee.
So moved.
Second.
You can probably move and second. Do you want to call roll it? Or we just?
It's a voice vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions? It passes unanimously. Okay.
Go forward.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
That's good count.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
I love the camaraderie and everything, how we came to decide it right here now. Appreciate that. Now that we've decided that, we'll move on to the absentees here.
Yes, so, Mendelssohn staff reached out to the state board, to let us know that they were finally at a point where they can schedule a hearing on all of the truancy legislation. There are 4 bills exactly that will be on topic, but the date is June 26th at 12 p.m. In the afternoon. And the main question is, and I did speak with President Thompson about it, that they asked if we wanted to give testimony. We would not be a government witness, but just to give like the testimony on behalf of the whole board, since we have a resolution that the board has already passed on, and there will be some other thoughts. If that was something you all can clearly testify in your own capacities, and we can send you the link to sign up. But if you all wanted an official board testimony, and so we could draft something and send it around to everyone so that you all can provide feedback.
So at 12.
June 26th.
June 26th.
At 12 p.m.
At 12 p.m. Representative,
Can I ask Representative Williams if has your committee, produced anything on this since the resolution?
No, the one thing, Jen might be able to, about was like the status of the crosswalk.
Yes, that is still being written, and I think it's actually great timing with the hearing, because if you all do want to have this testimony, and then we can make sure that they align. But Darren did do a fantastic job to start, mapping out on a spreadsheet all of the bills and how they align with our resolution as well. And a lot of other key information that we know will be useful, not just for us, but for Chairman Mendelson and other partners and agencies that we work with.
And it feels feasible to get it done before the hearing?
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So once the text is drafted, we will share it virtually with you all to provide comments, feedback, additions. And then we will prepare for submission so that we can testify with consent, so that the president can testify on behalf of the board. Well, that's that. That's it for that.
That's it, ma'am?
Well, then I have another item, but I'm.
Did you, yeah, you have one more item, which is the NASB conference.
Yeah.
You'd like to speak on that?
Yes.
Molly.
So some of you all have been signed up for the new member course, and there are some people who took the new member course last year. But the NASB annual conference will be in Louisville, Kentucky, Louisville. This year in October.
There's no beaches there.
There are no beaches in Kentucky. Kentucky is a
Bluegrass.
bus lane urban environment. So I think say, it will be in October, so if you are interested.
You say it's a month, but is there dates as of yet?
Yeah, I can,
The 20th.
they're on our
Dates help me a little bit more. I understand my participation.
22nd through the 25th.
25th, October 22nd through the 25th.
Thank
So
you.
registration has not opened yet, it will be open soon, but because this event takes place in October, we usually have to use, and that's like the split of like fiscal years and money available for those things. We usually pay for registration with current year fiscal, because we can't wait till October, because then it would be too late and it'd be
You have to
late.
pay before
Exactly,
September 30th.
exactly.
30th.
So, we're asking for, if you are interested in going to let us know, by August, at the August working session. So that we can go ahead and do the registration, coordinate flights and all those
Well,
things.
there is no August work session.
There is always an August working session, there's never an August public meeting. And separate from that, also, I have asked the staff to pull together the 2025 schedule. So you all will be looking at the 2025 schedule in August also for meetings. So that you all can look at it and then vote in September on what the next year's calendar be. But again, we'll have a draft of the 2025 schedule in August. With the hopes of having more feedback and to have a vote on it in September.
Okay. Discussions, so I didn't ask the conference. Seeing spotted faces, but no questions. Some looks of thought, but no questions.
And for those who attended the NASB conference in California last year, which was lovely, feel free to talk about the bag and this.
All right, that concludes what I think on the agenda is the business, the extra items that were added at this particular time. I want to thank the members. It seems like I'm at a point where I get to talk about the chair. I want to thank the members for your time and engagement tonight. As a reminder to members and the viewing public, the public meeting is being held 1 week earlier due to Juneteenth. So it's June 12th, next week. The public meeting will be held in the old council chamber at 441 Northwest. Anyone who wishes to provide testimony can sign up at SBOE.dc.gov by the deadline of Monday, June 10th, next Monday, 5:30 by that time. Seeing no further business for the state board, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been moved. Can I get a second?
Second.
It's been properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions, nays? We are adjourned.